if you would be remain upstanding for the Mayor's Chaplain, the Reverend Augusta Gibril.
Right, I wonder why I couldn't speak, because the light wasn't on. Do you know, it's the first time we've had a rain on the first full council meeting since I've been chaplain. And it's my third time round. And I promise my prayers would not be as long as they used to be. If it's all right with you, shall we pray? Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day and the showers of blessings that you have actually bestowed upon this council. We thank you for all the councillors. We pray for knowledge, wisdom, and understanding for them to be able to administer your work in their midst and amongst your people. We ask this in the blessed name of our Lord and Saviour Jesus Christ, who taught us when we pray to say, Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those that trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen.
Thank you. Please be seated. Are there any official apologies for absence?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Jackson is away on council business.
Thank you, Councillor Bateman. Declarations of interest. If there is, please declare the type of interest in other items on the agenda and also why they have an interest. Minutes of the last meeting. Sorry? Any interest? No. No. My apologies. I've started, so I'll begin at that. Thank you. Minutes of the last meeting. All agreed? Thank you. Announcements. I have been asked to read 3 short letters which have come in, 2 of which are in condolences with incidents that have happened over the last few weeks. The first 2 are from Mr. Bert Tischler, the Mayor of Bottrop. Dear Mr. Councillor Coleman, it's with great shock that we in Bottrop have been following the awful events in Manchester. The people of Bottrop are together with the people of Manchester, Blackpool and the whole of England. We see this as the second time this year that a cowardly terrorist attack has resulted in awful casualties. At this shocking time, we feel closely connected with the people in our twin town and our twin country. We think of the many young people who senselessly lost their lives at a happy pop concert. We grieve together with their families, and we are thinking of all the casualties who still have to struggle with their physical and psychological injuries. Despite these horrible events, let us continue together to push for the continued understanding, peace and freedom of the people of Europe. Bert Tischler, Mayor of Bottrop. A second letter arrived, unfortunately not too long after the first. Dear Mr. Mayor Coleman, the people of Bottrop have been shocked by the dreadful attacks by the Islamic terrorists on innocent people in London that have been reported in the international media. In such a situation, it's hard to find the right words. However, it is important that you know that the people of Bottrop are grieving together with the people of London, Blackpool and the whole of England. We feel closely connected with the people in our twin town and our twin country. We think of the dead and the many injured with the knowledge that the attacks by the terrorists are directed at us all. We think of the families of the dead and also of the people who have to continue to struggle with the many serious injuries they have received from the attacks. Together we look again to the future with a strong will and vow never to let the freedom and the values of Europe be taken away from us. Bert Tischler, Mayor of Bottrop, for which I'm sure we are all very grateful in receiving. There is a third letter from Bottrop, and it's on a happier note. And this is from Monica Budka, the Burgomaster. Dear Mr. Councillor Mayor Coleman, on behalf of the whole Bottrop delegation, I would like to thank you all for the wonderful welcome and friendliness shown to us during our visit to Mayor Making from the 14th to the 16th of May 2017. We were all able to spend a couple of lovely and interesting days in a friendly atmosphere which will stay with us as wonderful memories. I am delighted that the relationship between our twin towns gets ever stronger. With the best twin town wishes, Monica Budka. Thank you. We now move on to the Executive Audit Committee, Combined Fire Authorities Report to the Council. Councillor Blackman.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. This report stems from our discussions cross-party at the last full council meeting and has been followed up by informal consultations between the political group leaders. The purpose of the report is to extend the amount of time both for questions from members of the opposition and for answers from members of the administration. I wholeheartedly support and recommend it to you. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Seconded by...
I'm happy to second that, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. All in favour? Unanimous. Executive reports to Council. Councillor Blackburn.
Thank you very much, Mr Mayor. My report is before members and I am happy to answer all and any questions on it. There are just a couple of other things, though, that I would like to say. You already referred in your announcements, Mr Mayor, to the terrible series of terrorist attacks that have taken place since we last met. Of course, in the Manchester attack, we lost a Blackpool resident, Jane Tweddle, who was a receptionist at South Shore Academy. Councillor Campbell and I were able to speak to a number of her friends who attended the minute silence that we held outside the town hall shortly afterwards. And that has clearly been a very difficult time for her family, her friends and her work colleagues. And we once again extend our sympathies to them, as we do to the other victims from Lancashire and from all over the country who've been caught up in those. Also, of course, Mr Mayor, we've had the terrible fire at Grenfell Tower in London. I can reassure members, and thanks to those people who, again, were able to attend a moment's silent reflection in respect of that matter, and condolence books remain downstairs if anybody hasn't yet had a chance to sign them. Can I reassure members that clearly, as you will all know, we don't have any tower blocks in the council's stock. We have, and started very shortly after, looking at the fire precautions, the evacuation advice and general safety procedures for all of the sort of 5,500 units of council housing stock. With one exception, which is Kennedy House, we have no buildings that are 4 stories or more, and the nature of their construction being largely 1950s and 1960s is that they're not clad, and the communal areas by and large are concrete or something very similar to that, so there is very little to burn. Nonetheless, BCH and My Blackpool Homes are carrying out a full fire risk assessment. All the ones that we've got in place are currently up to date. I have to say I was very pleased at how quickly and fully Blackpool Coastal Housing were able to answer my queries in the hours and days after the disaster in London. So they clearly had most of that information at their fingertips. As we've started to look at that, Mr Mayor, it has become clear to us that having broadly satisfied ourselves that the council housing stock and the My Blackpool Homes stock is not overly problematic, we probably now need to move on to look at other types of buildings, particularly in Blackpool. We think about houses in multiple occupancy, we think about private sector flats, and we think about hotels and guest houses. We will, over the next few weeks, be working with our trading standards, our housing enforcement teams, and with the Fire and Rescue Service to see what we can do to take a risk-based approach to buildings in the town that may be absolutely nothing to do with the council at all, but that we think might have slightly more complicated evacuation plans than one would normally expect, or may have more vulnerable people in them than one might normally see. And I think by taking that town-wide approach, we can give ourselves a little more reassurance, certainly by working together with the Fire and Rescue Service. So we're not complacent about the issue. However, we are persuaded that the plans that are in place at the moment are appropriate, and that we don't have any of the aluminium cladding, composite cladding, which has been an issue for so many other local authorities. Just finally, Mr Mayor, in my report I refer at the bottom of page 14 to the parliamentary election, and I just again want to reinforce my thanks to all of the staff who worked on the election. A snap general election which nobody is expecting, and I don't think any of us really were expecting it, is a huge challenge to electoral services staff and to democratic services. I know that one of our staff in electoral services had a long planned holiday which she actually cancelled in order to work on the election, which I think is testament to the diligence and the hard work that we have become used to from the Chief Executive, from Mr Towers, and from all of their team in democratic services and electoral registration. So thanks again to them. Thanks to all of the candidates who put their names forward. As we all know, it takes a great deal of guts to put your name forward for election. Particular congratulations, of course, to Paul Maynard and to Gordon Marsden, who were successful in their contests. But just finally, Mr Mayor, before I sit down and before the red light comes on, during the Warbrek by-election, there was posted by me on the Blackpool Labour Facebook page a photograph of a car with Conservative posters in it, which I said was parked on double yellow lines. I didn't know 2 things at the time. Firstly, it wasn't. And secondly, it belonged to Councillor Michelle Scott. I didn't know that either, although now I've looked again at the photograph and the registration plate, it probably should have been obvious. If I've caused Councillor Michelle Scott any distress or upset by doing that, I do apologise. As soon as we became aware of the error, the post was taken down off Facebook. It was not mine or anybody else's intention to suggest that she'd done anything wrong, and I, once again, Mr Mayor, apologise and hope that she will accept that apology. I welcomed her to the council meeting last time, I meant it, and I welcome her again now. Thank you.
One day I'll get used to this light switch. So it's now item 5, am I correct, sir? Thank you. Questions? Sorry, you start. Don't be too clever, I'm having a bad one. All right, thank you. So it's page 11. Any questions? 12? Thank you, Councillor Williams.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, it hurts every time I stand up at the moment. Well, if you don't mind, thank you. That's very kind.
Sorry, I should probably say that more formally, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Williams has had an operation on his knee, and I'm disappointed to report that he's recovering well. But I don't think it's not really fair to ask him to keep getting up and down. So without wishing to encourage him, is it all right if he remains in his seat?
Thank you. They've actually managed, they've given me half a uni and removed my wallet, so I've done all right. First off, can I just endorse what the leader said in regards to the tragedies that have happened? We all suffer from that, not just the people living in the area or the people who've lost loved ones, but everyone is affected. And also endorse on the words he said about the electoral staff and democratic services. A marvellous job in very short notice. I would have preferred much shorter notice, actually. I'd have preferred maybe a couple of weeks before the 8 weeks, but never mind, that's the way things go. So well done on that. I'm referring, Mr. Mayor, to the Blackpool Museum project. I've never been, I don't like the word museum anyway. I think everyone that spoke to me knows that. But this has already cost us £5 million, and the leaders again said over and over time and time again that if it doesn't stack up, we won't go ahead with it. Well, I'm suggesting after spending £5 million, we jack it. I'm suggesting we scrap it. If we have to focus on getting the conference centre right, let's use that space more valuably than we're doing what we're doing. That was it. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Mine was on strategic issues, financial management, and it was to do with the working balances, which are down to 3.2 million with a target of 6 million, which is well known. The question that I'd like to ask is, where was the 3 million redesignated by the Director of Resources to be used before it was moved into working balances? Is this a sum of money that was ring-fenced for a project or something within the town? Nice to know that it can actually find 3 million when needed. I know that the problem is being caused through the extra expense with looked after children, which is an excellent cause, but where would it have been spent otherwise? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just two issues on page 12. If I can just quickly refer to the museum project. I am very concerned about this, and I'm wondering if it is going to go ahead, because if my information is correct, we were thinking of charging people to go into this, something in the region of £8. Now, I could have got my information all mixed up. I understand that, Mr. Mayor. But if you go to some of the really excellent museums in London, such as the V&A, the Natural History Museum, Imperial War Museum, there is no charge. You can go there free, and they really are fabulous and worth going into. And if I can just touch on the financial management, today, like a bolt out of the blue, along with 3 other councillors, we received notification that there is a company that are going to put in planning permission for 86 houses on some land on Warren Drive. I just wondered, Mr. Mayor, if the leader of the council could actually give us an assurance that the land on there that belongs to Blackpool Council is not sold to these developers. I know that we're short of money, as it shows under financial management, but I would like an assurance this evening that this piece of land that joins onto this, where they're hoping to build 86 houses, will not be sold by this council to prop up our money. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Keller. And Councillor Gallagher.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to echo the concerns of my colleagues about the museum, and previously I've asked about the business plan and if members could have access to it to actually scrutinise that plan in terms of the concern that we have, which is a very valid concern in terms of the sustainability of that museum, Mr. Mayor, that I believe that it could be a good opportunity for scrutiny in a proactive way to actually see that plan, discuss the plan and work out if it's in the council's best interest to continue with the project in a proactive way rather than a reactive sense of trying to fix a problem once it's occurred. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
So sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Some time ago, the leader of the council led a small delegation to China. What I'm trying to find out is, I've not heard anything since then, and I'm wondering how this, some could call it a jolly, I suppose, how this has benefited the town of Blackpool. I understand that one of the people on with that delegation, an officer in fact, was due to leave the council at any time. And so, what was it all about? Was it just, as I say, a bit of a jolly? Or was it a serious matter which was going to benefit this town for the future? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Callow. Councillor Mrs. Callow.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have mentioned this in the past, but I'm going to mention it again in the hope that we will get some results. I know that we're planning to do an awful lot in Blackpool and improve it for the visitors and for the locals alike, and I fully support that. But while we're doing that, we've got things around us that are just falling to pieces. Now, I asked the leader of the council some months ago about Yates's, because it is a disgrace with all the fly posting on there, and it's in a conservation area, and the leader did say that there were plans to start building in May of this year, and there's nothing happening yet. I just wondered if he's got anything else to tell the council about this development. And also, if I could just mention this hotel here on the corner. The part facing the promenade is a positive disgrace. It needs painting, it needs cleaning, and the front door doesn't open, so that is used by people sitting in there, drinking, leaving all the rubbish. Those steps haven't been cleaned for donkey's years, and to say that it's in a prime spot like that on our proud promenade, it is an absolute disgrace. And I wondered if we could do something like a 215 on it, or get somebody to tell them to smart it up, for goodness sake. This is a large company, and they do a lot of advertising on the television about their fabulous hotels up and down the country, and we've got this here on the corner of Blackpool Promenade. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Gelling.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I wanted to applaud the council's work in terms of investment marketing and all the initiatives that are currently underway there. I wondered if there was an opportunity, Mr. Mayor, in terms of to look back at previous schemes where we tried to bring different partners together. There was one a few years ago, a children's conference, which was very successful. And I've mentioned it in the past, but an opportunity surely exists to create a business conference for the same purpose, where we actually generate a plan, a strategy, where we actually recruit business ambassadors to actually go out and sell the plots of land that we have, the types of networking that we need, and actually use a conference, a business conference, to do just that. So I just wondered if we could actually enable the investment marketing to actually put that sort of infrastructure in place to allow it to go and actually be even better than the work that's already underway. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. No more speakers on... It's 14. Oh, yes, thank you. Councillor Scott.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The Blue Flag Award, fantastic news. Quality mark for the second time on Blackpool South Beach. That goes on to read 3 other...
Sorry, point of order, Mr Mayor. I don't wish to be disrespectful to Councillor Scott, but his question is best directed to Councillor Campbell. The Blue Flag Award and beach cleanliness is part of her portfolio. I just don't want you asking me a question that I can't answer.
Thank you, Councillor Scott. And I made an error, so I should have said Councillor Mr Scott, shouldn't I? And so I trust Councillor Mrs Scott will forgive me for that. Just thought I'd join the clan. Thank you. Councillor Blackburn. Is it you? No? Oh, sorry. Thank you. Councillor Taylor.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. It's a comment on Victoria Hospital, and I'd like to start by thanking all the staff at Blackpool Victoria Hospital for all the incredible work that they do. I think everyone in here will agree they do a fantastic job. I think it's even more incredible that the work that they do when you take into consideration the £110 million of cuts that they've had to face in the past 6 years. £21 million of that they've had to find this year alone. So yeah, I mean, I think it's an absolutely incredible achievement that they're doing in the face of all the cuts. I also read a letter last week from Philip Dunn to Paul Maynard stating that they were celebrating a £1 million investment in the NHS in Blackpool, which it is, isn't it? No, it's a general question. It is. Can I carry on?
Carry on. That's his question.
It's a question.
Thank you very much. Is that good?
Carry on.
Cheers. So where was I? So the Tory government very generous are giving us back 0.9% of the £110 million that they've taken off us. So it's very nice of them. And I do pity any local Conservative council that's got to explain such devastating cuts to our local service that's affecting their own residents. Thank you.
Councillor Collett? I didn't see it.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. You'll be pleased to know that mine has nothing to do with...
Could we have some order, please?
So you'll be pleased to know mine has nothing to do with report either, but it's to do with Blackpool residents, so I'm going to get asked. Only now are we learning about the potential damage caused by to people caused by the loss of 700,000 pieces of medical documentation that were left in a warehouse under the watch of Jeremy Hunt and this government. These were cancer diagnoses, GP appointments, blood tests, all left, not undelivered. I was just wondering, not only is that a travesty in itself, Mr Mayor, this was known about a year ago and was not made public until it appeared in the front page of The Guardian, and the Health Secretary was brought to Parliament to basically spell out what had happened. I'm just wondering if we know how many Blackpool residents have been affected, what the human cost, any damage being caused to the residents of Blackpool, and also the financial cost, Mr Mayor. This will need to be corrected, which also occurs the repeat of tests, appointments, and I was just wondering if that would have any reflection on the £21 million worth of cuts already being found by Blackpool Hospital this year. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Collett. Councillor Williams?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I will stand up for this. No, I'm quite fine on that, thank you. I hear the sentiment of what you're saying, and it's an echo, isn't it? It's an echo of what's going on nationally, and the argument will go on forever. But perhaps if the £10 billion that Labour spent on a failed IT system, which caused a lot of cock-ups in terms of medical records and data, perhaps if that £10 billion could have been reinvested in the national health, things may not be as bad as they are now. So we can all take the blame for the failings of the NHS and the successes, I'm afraid. I find your comments, both of you, badly timed, because this is the leader's report. Nothing in the leader's report about the hospital or the national health. So, echo away.
Questions? No questions. Councillor Blackburn.
Thank you very much, Mr Mayor. Councillor Williams, thank you for your comments. I knew that my remarks about both the elections and the terrible tragedy were shared across the chamber. I'm grateful, as always, to the support from the Conservative group for issues like that. The museum, he says we spent 5 million. I think he's trying to imply that we spent £5 million of our money. In fact, we got... Oh, well, I'm pleased about that. I'm sorry to cast aspersions. We, of course, set aside a maximum of £2 million to investigate the museum project. I think we spent roughly half of that thus far, which so a £1 million contribution, up to a £1 million contribution from Blackpool Council at the moment. We had what they call a gateway review with the Heritage Lottery Fund a week last Friday, where we examined progress. A formal submission will be made on that. Obviously, getting the funding for the conference centre in the same building and next door to the building is a bit of a game changer in terms of how we use that space. I hear what Councillor Williams has got to say, but I go back to my previous point, which is if it can exist without ongoing, and Councillor Galley used the word sustainability, this has been part of my answer every time you've asked me the question, which is if we can do it without it requiring ongoing subsidy from the council, we'll do it. If we can't, we won't, and it doesn't matter how many times you ask me the question, although I greatly respect your right to do so, the answer ain't going to change. Councillor Clapham, where did the money come from? It came from two sources. Firstly, our earmarked reserves. We have earmarked reserves at any time that can vary between sort of 30 million and 50 million. They are earmarked around specific projects, but of course we review the risk of those projects and of those eventualities on a very regular basis. So some of the money came out of earmarked reserves because we felt that the risk of that particular earmarked reserve being called upon within the next 12 months was minimal. And if I'm wrong, then somebody's going to prison. I think it's Mr Thompson rather than me. The rest of the money came from, you remember we did something that sounded really complicated and techie a couple of budgets ago, where we changed the minimum revenue protection rate, basically the way in which we... Sorry? Provision. Minimum revenue provision, I'm sorry. Protection, provision. Yeah. Whereby we reprofiled the council's debt commitment. That, if you remember, I said at the time, generated a significant saving for us. We've kept that in reserve and we've dripped it into the council's budgets over 3 years, so that's where the rest of it came from. Councillor Mrs Callow, the modelling around the museum has always assumed that there would be an entrance charge, and that modelling has gone from quite a small entrance charge to quite a significant entrance charge, and as they've tried to work out what the impact of that would have. National portfolio museums like the Natural History Museum and the V&A are free at the point of entry because they're funded directly by the government and the Arts Council and the Heritage Lottery Fund. That was never going to be the case in Blackpool's case because it just doesn't work like that, unfortunately. But obviously that how much we charge it builds into the sustainability modelling that I was referring to in answer to Councillor Williams and Councillor Galley's questions. So yeah, there's, as with all of these things, the more you charge, the less people will come in, and it's about trying to find if there's a balance. And I don't know if there's a balance, because that's part of the HLF Gateway review process. And, you know, we are reaching a point, I would say, by the end of this calendar year at the latest, whereby we will know. We will know. And I'm not going to preempt that decision. Councillor Mrs Callow, you've caught me slightly on the hop with the Warren Drive business, because I didn't know that a planning application had been made. Nor did I... Nor did I know that we had significant land holdings at Warren Drive either. But what I'm perfectly happy to do is to sit down and talk to you about it. I just need to be in possession of the full facts, and I'm sure you'll put me in possession of them. But I do hear your concerns, and as I said, I didn't know anything about it until you just stood up and told me about it. But I'm more than happy to sit down with yourself and Councillor Callow and discuss your concerns and see what, if anything, we can do to help. You know that I can't say too much about planning applications because it would be contrary to the Local Government Act, but I hear very clearly what you're saying, and that you've said this consistently, and I understand. But I will get my office to set up a meeting with you tomorrow, if that's all right. Councillor Galley, I've answered your question, that really, haven't I? I answered it at every council meeting. But yeah, the same answer. If we can do it without it requiring ongoing public subsidy, we'll do it. If we can't, we won't. Councillor Callow, I went to China in March of last year with Alan Cavell and Carmel McKeough. We did know at the time that Carmel was going to be leaving us. However, when we'd hosted delegations from China here, and when we've hosted delegations from China since, they have, as I'm afraid is part of the culture of municipal government over there, they turn up and they're all blogs, right? And the last time they came, I think there was 17 of them. So we took a fairly small delegation, frankly, compared to the ones that they bring over here. But they've all tended to be men. And what I wanted to do was to take a very small and therefore cost-effective delegation of 3, but I wanted one of those people to be a senior female officer, because I wanted to make the point that in doing business between Britain and China, there needs to be an understanding that they're not just going to come and meet a load of blokes in suits. That's why I chose to take a senior female officer with us, even though we knew that she would be leaving the authority not all that long afterwards, because we felt it was an important statement. There is, of course, Mr Mayor, a delayed echo in this chamber, because Councillor Callow asked me exactly this question just over 12 months ago, following some comments that Councillor Williams had made in the Gazette. The total cost of the trip was round about £4,000, all told. As a consequence of it, though, we did, of course, sign a 5-year deal to sell the Blackpool Open Dance Championship to the Chinese in the sum of £500,000. In addition to that, we get a share of the ticket sale revenue every year, which this year alone was £44,000, which was 10 times the amount that the trip cost. I've said to Councillor Callow, you know, I earn £58,000 a year. If I want a holiday to China, I'm perfectly capable of paying for it myself and doing it on my own terms. I don't need the local authority to subsidise that. We have, of course, twinned with Sanya as well in the meantime. So if he's managed to miss the £500,000 Open Dance Championship deal, if he's managed to miss the twinning with Sanya, and if he's managed to miss all the reports that were in the local press at the time about the cost of the trip and the potential benefits of the trip, I'm sorry about that, but it is very clearly all a matter of public record. Councillor Mrs Callow Yates's, I can't believe that after 15 years in this job, I was stupid enough to stand up and give you a date when something was going to be... And I'm going to go on, Mr Mayor, with any disrespect at all to Councillor Mrs Callow, I'm going to go home and I'm going to watch the last council meeting, because I'm not sure I would have done that. Did I? Thank you. Very helpful. Thank you, Councillor Campbell. Well, apparently I did say May. And I'd have said May because somebody told me to say May. What she's now told me, while you were asking the question, is there's been slippage. Now, perhaps you might want to ask Councillor Campbell, when she stands up and gives a report in a minute, what that means, because I don't know. I'm certainly not going to repeat the mistake of giving you another date by when things will be started. The hotel on the corner, I'm told that there is action here. I understand that there are plans for 3 new restaurants to open up on the frontage, and that work on them is going to start shortly. But can I just be clear that who's told me all of this, right? No, I'm not even giving you a year. But I further understand, again, from my very enlightened colleague here, that the hotel in question has a new management company in place and is aware of your concerns and our concerns about this. Councillor Galley, I mean, I am very impressed, as you clearly are, by the investment marketing activity that's going on at the moment. But funnily enough, I was talking to Councillor Smith just before we came down here about the fact that you would ask questions about A, B and C. You've let us down on one of those, but we got the other ones. I've not so much been writing them down as ticking them off. But what Councillor Smith and I have agreed is that he and Mr Thompson and others will meet with you as the chairman of the Audit Committee once every sort of 4 to 6 weeks to get your input into this, as you do appear to be genuinely interested in it, and you can discuss your ideas for a business conference with him. Because it sounds lovely, but if we're going to do it, I'm going to leave you two to it. I hope you won't take offence at that. Councillor Taylor Jr. That's what I've written. I didn't mean to write that, but that's just what I wrote. Look, I mean, NHS finances are and will continue to be an issue. And I think I was at the DCLG and the Home Office on Monday of this week, and one of the things that politicians of all political persuasions, local and national, I think, have taken away from this was that we expected the election to be all about Brexit, and certainly the Conservative Party and their candidates expected it to be all about Brexit. What, of course, we all discovered when we got on the doorsteps was that people wanted to talk to us about schools, about hospitals, about roads, and, you know, sort of about generally about public services, how safe people feel and everything else. And I do believe that has been heard in Westminster and Whitehall. And I think to see the way in which the government have started to move, even today, even in the course of the Queen's speech debate, towards talking about a new settlement for public sector workers, to talking about ending the 1% pay cap, they're doing that because they felt a very real pressure from the electorate to respond to that. So it clearly is it's a concern. It's a concern to people out there, and I'm sure it's one that will be that will continue to be debated and discussed. Councillor Collett, the 700,000 pieces of medical documentation which went missing. I didn't know about that. I don't read the Guardian. I can't. It's £1. It's £1.60. Yeah, it's expensive. You can afford it. It's £1.60. I'm too busy going to China. I didn't know about that, in all honesty. What I can certainly do is to write to the Victoria Hospital and to the CCG to find out what the impact of that has been on Blackpool, and I will send copies of the reply to you and to every other member of the council. It certainly doesn't sound very good, but I'd have to be honest and say that I don't know anything about it, which incidentally is why you're supposed to tip the leader off to what you're going to ask before you ask it. But you know, seeing as we've done that in a very public setting, you think they found it? All right. Well, they found it apparently. Found it a year ago. Right. You shouldn't tell anyone. Right. Okay. I'm gonna sit. I'm going to sit down now, Mr. Mayor. Thank you very much for all your questions. It's been great fun.
I was going to defend you then. Right, thank you. Right. Deputy Leader of Tourism, I believe. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Campbell, thank you.
Thank you. Delighted as ever to present my report and happy to take any questions. But I just have one update that I'd like to give to members, and I feel as though I should actually have a bit of a drum roll for this, but, you know, a lot of people aren't excited, but I am quite excited by the fact that Plymouth Road Bridge opens to traffic fully as from tomorrow night. So, almost a whole month ahead of schedule, and within budget as well. Obviously, there will be... the next one's Waterloo, but don't say anything. Don't tell them. There will still be some work ongoing. It will open both ways to traffic, 2 lanes. But there is going to be some snagging stuff that obviously they'll still have to deal with, but they won't have to do any closures to do that. So, yeah, I'm quite excited by it. The leader wasn't, but I am excited by it. So, but apart from that, I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Campbell. Page 15. Thank you, Councillor Clapham.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's Transport Hub in Market Street. This is without doubt an improvement, but it really is just a number of bus bays. I don't think the description as a transport hub is really what you've built there. It's very nice for the buses for going in there, parking up. It is a big improvement. But surely Blackpool should have better than that for a transport hub. Last year, Little Accrington, small town, they have built a very nice transport hub or even a bus station. It's triangular in plan view, It takes up a fairly small amount of land, so economically, in terms of land use, it's extremely good. And with it being three-sided, obviously the buses can circulate and park on all three sides. Why cannot Blackpool build a similar station rather than have a series of streets which are just used for the convenience of buses? If you come into this town and you've not got the knowledge of the streets and where the routes are, it's a nightmare. If we had a proper transport hub, life would be so much better and the traffic would probably flow a lot better. So a little trip to Accrington could be worthwhile. Okay?
Thank you, Councillor Callum. Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm referring to the quality corridors, and I'm glad to see we're making a start, but boy, have we got a long way to go. And in the words of the great Eddie Collett, get the bulldozers out and get them down Central Drive and get it sorted. If you're driving into town along Central Drive, it's the best view of the tower you're going to get. And it's not called Central Drive for nothing. It was the Central Drive. And apart from Councillor Callow's house, perhaps we can put a blue plaque on that and leave it there, because that's where Councillor Callow was born. It really is an eyesore. And if you've done your surveys, as you said, knock on the doors, etc., you'll know a lot of people are also talking about how bad the shops along the front are looking, how shoddy they look, the shops inside Blackpool on Talbot Road, etc., etc. It is a disgrace. But I know how difficult it is to attract good retail services. And it's going to be made even more difficult if you've just read today the announcement that Botany Bay is going to turn into an outlet, a brand outlet with high street names. And that's not 10 minutes from Blackpool, really, down the M55. We need to keep a check on these things, but certainly we need to clean up the town. It looks an absolute mess. And just to endorse what my colleague and deputy said today, if you've also knocked on the doors, you've also seen on the surveys, as we have, we want a bus station. I've been saying it for years. We've all been saying it for years. We want a bus station. So do the people of Blackpool. But you don't agree with that. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. Any other speakers? I'm sorry, Councillor Mr. Scott.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Scott. I didn't beg your pardon. I think we'll let ladies first then. Councillor Mrs. Scott.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm delighted to hear that Plymouth Road Bridge is opening tomorrow. But could we please have some reassurance that the traffic management around that area will also be considered, monitored and addressed if the sorts of hold-ups that were created previously recur when the bridge is fully open? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mrs. Scott. Councillor Mr. Scott, we'll see if we can get it right between us this time, shall we?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Not at all, sir.
Yeah. So I thought it was general questions earlier on, just like Councillor Taylor did, so apologies for that. The Blue Flag Award, absolutely fantastic, as I was trying to say earlier on. It's only a small paragraph, really, but I'll just finish with the last paragraph. It says, 3 other beaches or areas of beach in Blackpool have also been granted Seaside Awards for the 4th successive year, giving the resort an entire coastline of award-winning beaches. It's fantastic news. I'm absolutely delighted with it. The only thing I am disappointed with is that the prom itself is being badly neglected, particularly on the North Shore. I took an officer with me last year to show him the weeds that are growing against the stone fence all along the prom up to Red Bank and the surrounding areas of both wards, Warbrack and around Red Bank. Nothing has been done about it, and the weeds are now about a third away across the pedestrian path on the top prom. They've had the weed killers out, but unfortunately they did the grass, and they've killed quite a bit of the grass on the North Prom. I was wondering if we could have someone come out and have a proper look at it, please, and see if we could tidy it up, because there are a lot of hotels on the North Shore with lots of visitors walking up and down the prom every day. So thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Mr. Scott. Oh, wait, that was page 15, I'm sorry. Yes, yes. Any more questions on page 15? Thank you. Page 16. Thank you, Councillor Williams.
Mr. Mayor, I also applaud the quality of the beaches now. They are looking absolutely stunning. But the problem is nobody's going on them. It's a massive part of our family product, if you like. And I know we've no deck chairs, etc., etc. But if somebody wants to go and sit on the sands to enjoy themselves, they're going to have to bring their own chairs. Surely we must start looking at some way we could start to utilise one of the best things we've got in Blackpool, which are our golden sands. We really need to start thinking about that. It's no good having blue water or blue beach awards if nobody's going on them.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. Anyone else? Councillor Clapham, so sorry. Well, you're too shy.
Oh dear. It's one where the Labour group will win their gambling, if you like. Same topic, all about contracts and procurement. You were guaranteed to have me stand up on this one, so there we are. It's really the number of bids from Blackpool column that I am concentrating on. There are an awful lot of zeros in there, and I know, and it's beyond your control in terms of whether people do bid or otherwise. But I'm just wondering, by looking at the number of voids on there, how much you actually encourage local businesses to bid. How much knowledge do they get that these contracts are available? You know, I don't know your procurement procedure, but it does seem a shame that we're getting all those blanks in that right-hand column, and you've got wood waste going to a company in Maidenhead. It seems beyond belief, but there we are. If you can do more encouraging for local firms to actually bid, it'll be good for the economy and good for local jobs. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Clapham. Any more questions on page 16? Page 17. No questions. Page 18. No questions. Page 19. Councillor Williams.
So there are two questions on this page, if I may. Talbot Gateway, yes, we've completed the first phase. We saw 1,000 employees brought into the town centre, not all new jobs, of course, and we're now entering phase 2. We've still got empty office accommodation in Bickerstaff. We've still got empty retail units, yet we're going to build more. What are we doing about getting these retail units filled? Have we any good news on that yet? Because they've been empty for an awful long time. And we're going ahead and building a hotel, more retail, etc., and we've not really finished phase 1. And the other question is on the Central Leisure Quarter. And I'm delighted we're doing something on this, and I'm sure the announcement will fit very well and be very timely when that announcement is made as what this all singing, all dancing, fantastic leisure facility is going to be, whatever. But I'm a little bit concerned when it says the deal was arranged in IAPA, which is the, as you know, the event that the leader and Mr. Cavell went to in Orlando, when the company who's got the exclusivity on this is based in Manchester, and they're struggling at the moment to find funds. So I just don't see the correlation between that at all. Perhaps you can correct me if I'm wrong on that, or perhaps you can explain why. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. Any more questions? Page 19. Page 20. No questions, page 20. Any general questions? Thank you, Councillor Galley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've got 3 questions, so I will go quickly. First is there any news about the public space protection order for parks? It's been almost 2 years since it was introduced, and we're still waiting for it to be introduced on the ground. I was asked tonight if I could ask that question by a friends group. The second question concerns an incident or an issue that I picked up last night. About 20 to 6, I caught the bus from Clifton Street, went round Abingdon Street, up Talbot Road. And I have to be very careful how I phrase this, but it was full of litter and there were a number of street drinkers, and the whole scene looked horrendous, Mr. Mayor. Now, that isn't a criticism of the team that picked the litter up. It's a criticism of the people that dropped the litter and the people that are drinking in public. So I just wondered again, we have the powers in terms of the public space protection order to stop people drinking, in terms of taking the liquor off them and pouring it down the drain. And if we are actually about to sort of push that strategy, because nothing stops a street drinker or anyone who likes their lager or any type of alcohol from going to a place if they know it's going to be poured down the drain in front of them. The other issue was, I just wondered how many people have been fined for litter recently, because it clearly isn't working at that point. It certainly wasn't last night anyway. And as I say, last time I talked on this subject, I ended up on the front of the Gazette. So I've tried to be incredibly sensitive in my words, and I say that is not a criticism of the council's team. They are doing a great job. It's a criticism of the people who are dropping the litter. The other question I had concerns a number of incidents that have happened against taxi drivers throughout the town over the last few months, which I'm sure I know you'll be aware of, where they've been targeted by a small number of groups of teenagers of certain ages who are throwing stones at them. And I just wondered if you've had an update for the Chamber on what mitigation's being done to target the leaders of each of those small gangs, and if you could update us with that. Brilliant. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Gelly. Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Two questions, if I may, please. The Arts Hotel behind the Metropole. We bought that 2 years ago, and we're supposed to be getting repaid for that on a monthly, I presume, or a yearly basis. Work was supposed to start on that, and it was due to be open on the 2016. It obviously didn't. I contacted the people involved in this and was told, oh no, we've had some setback, some slippage. I know you'd enjoy that. And that work will now begin in summer 2017 and hopefully opened at the end of the year next year. Nothing's happening. I've heard there's asbestos in the place. Have we bought a white elephant? Are we being paid our money back, or are we writing this off? And the second question applies to littering, which my colleagues just talked about. Do we still have the agreement with, I don't know, it was grade AGM, is it? What? 3GS. Is that still in place? Because I haven't seen anyone around lately. There was something else I wanted to ask, but I forgot what that was. Oh, it was involved in that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. Any... Councillor Mrs. Callow, do forgive me.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is really on highways and pavements. It does come under this portfolio, but Councillor Jackson isn't here this evening. And I have mentioned this before about cycling on the pavements. I know somebody's going to jump up and say, oh, well, we've got police cuts, etc., but this has been going on for very, very many years, before there were any police cuts or any cuts at all. But it's getting steadily worse. We've got more and more cyclists on the pavement. I'm not talking about little children, because, you know, they're perhaps too timid to go on the road. I'm talking about adults that are speeding on pavements. Their hands are off the handlebars, they're on the mobile phones, they've no bells. They seem to think they've got a God-given right to go on the pavement, even when there's very little motor cars and things on the roads. They're still using the pavements, and I think it's a positive disgrace. A lot of them have got crash helmets on. They've got yellow jackets. I wonder, Mr. Mayor, if we're going to come, the day will come, when pedestrians will have to wear crash helmets to protect them from these cyclists, because one day there is going to be such a nasty accident, and anybody who walks on the pavements these days takes their lives in their own hands with some of these cyclists. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Callow. Councillor Blackburn.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't think I've ever done this before. I rise to support Councillor Mrs. Callow. There we go. First time for everything.
It's a good mayor.
One of my constituents' daughters I think the girl was either 3 or 4 years old last year, was hit by a speeding cyclist. It was widely reported, and anybody who saw the CCTV footage either through the local newspaper or on the television news would have been absolutely horrified. And it was amazing that the girl survived with relatively minor injuries, although it was incredibly traumatic, I'm sure, for her and for her parents. That case was successfully ended up in court because the cyclist handed themselves in, for want of a better word. But this is an issue. Because of where my house is designed, I have to reverse my car off the drive, and the number of times I've nearly hit people who've been cycling on the pavement behind my car. It's a problem that we've all experienced. I do know it's something that certainly at packed meetings, certainly in Talbot Ward, this comes up very frequently. We have had conversations with the police. Signs have gone up in various places. I am aware in my own ward and in Talbot Ward that sort of short intervention pieces of work have taken place whereby police officers and council staff have stopped people who are cycling on the pavement and sort of warned them about the behaviour. But I agree, it needs a change in attitude from the public, and it sort of touches on Councillor Galley's point. I thought Councillor Williams was going to ask me a question earlier on about sort of business rate collection rates as well. But, you know, people have got responsibility to pay the business rates. People have got a responsibility not to drop litter. People have got a responsibility not to cycle on the pavement. There's so much there's only so much we and the police can do. I await Councillor Campbell's response. I'm sure she's got a very good response to you. But I echo your comments, but also say that this is in the hands largely of the people that do this sort of thing. And, you know, I don't know what the solution is, but I do accept that it's a significant problem, and it's a surprise that there hasn't been further injuries.
Thank you. Councillor Smith?
I was going to say, as I can echo Councillor Blackburn, we've had many sort of, at our PAC meetings over the years, it's been raised a key issue by the chair, and we've had many campaigns where we've been with the police on the pavement, reporting it, booking them for doing that, putting street signs up. It's a very focal part every sort of 2 or 3 months. A campaign arises through the PAC meeting, so it's an ongoing issue. But it's the people who are doing the cycling causing the problem. Blackpool Council can do its best to enforce on it with the police and the powers to be, but it's down to the people who are sort of just breaking the law, basically, you know, on that. So, thank you.
Thank you. Sorry, Councillor Mr. Scott.
Sorry, just to continue the theme, it's also a bit of a problem on the prom, where we have a shared path with cyclists. And over the past number of months, it's been very noticeable. There's a growing movement of cycle rage, if you want to call it. And it's only a matter of time now before there is a serious... In fact, there was an incident a little while ago where a cyclist deliberately ran over a small dog and just kept on cycling. And I think sooner or later it is going to cause a problem. I do not know what the answer is with the shared path, whether there can be a change made or be looked at in some way. But if it could be looked at, it would be much appreciated. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Scott. Any more speakers? Thank you. Councillor Campbell to respond.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Let's go back, sorry. Councillor Clapham, Transport Hub. It's not just buses, it is taxis as well. That's what I'm going to say to defend it. But there is also a plan to do the same as we've done on Market Street or on Corporation Street, which is phase 2. It will then be, you talk about people not knowing where to get the bus from. There will be signs very clearly marking that you can get any bus to anywhere in town from those areas. So all the buses will actually come into that area. So that is the plan. Maybe it doesn't work as well as we would hope at the moment, but that will come in time. I'm not seeing Accrington's Transport Hub, obviously. Might take a little trip. I used to go to Accrington quite a lot. It's a very nice place. Why can't we have one? Well, you find me the money and I'll build you one. I promise you. Yeah. Councillor Williams, quality corridors. I'm quite impressed by the quality corridor work. It's starting to look very nice. Obviously, it's a bit problematic trying to get around some parts in town at the moment, but I think you'll agree that it'll be worth it in the long run. a bulldozer to Central Drive. That's what I've written there. So yes, I would drive that bulldozer. I'll be honest with you. Yes, yes. No, I mean obviously, you know, no. I've been quite open about that. There are places in Central Drive that need a lot of work, and we have had conversations. One end to the other. We have had conversations where we do need to start looking at that area. So you can be rest assured that it is on the agenda. Not quite a bulldozer, I'm afraid, but yes. Talbot, you mentioned Talbot Road as well, and Botany Bay I've written here. I'm not even sure where Botany Bay is, to be honest with you. Chorley, right, okay. I don't get out of Blackpool very often, I'm afraid. And yes, bus station, you find me the money and we'll build you a bus station, but at the moment we can't afford one. Councillor Mrs Scott, Plymouth Road Bridge, traffic management in the area. I was actually speaking about that with an officer today. Obviously we're going to keep a very close eye on that area. I do know there can be problems around there, whether that's traffic light phasing or I'm not very sure what the answer is yet. But rest assured that is on the agenda as well. Councillor Mr Scott, Blue Flag Award. Yeah, very pleased with our blue flag. Hoping for more in the years to come. Very pleased we've kept it for the second year running, and very pleased and happy with our award-winning beaches. The neglected area in the prom, I will have that investigated for you. Councillor Williams, deck chairs. There's lots of people use the beaches without using a deck chair. Lots and lots of people. I do believe that we have tried to sell the concession for the deck chair numerous times. Nobody wants to take it because they lose money. Nobody's going to take something that will lose money, unfortunately. Okay. Let us know what it is. Yeah. Councillor Clapham, I did that extra box especially for you, and I knew you would have a question about it. Yeah. Oh, one of these days you're not going to have one. Yeah. You will. Yeah. We can't make people bid, unfortunately. And looking at some of these very technical things, now some of them aren't, I agree. But obviously the Rebus Winter Gardens Conference Development, there's only very few people that can do things like that. I'm sure we encourage as many Blackpool companies as we can to take that, try and tender for things. I will have a look at procurement and see if there's anything else we can do, but at the end of the day, you can't award contracts to local people just because they are local. It's against the law. Councillor Williams, Talbot Gateway retail units. Yeah, we do plan on building more. I'm a firm believer that the more you redevelop an area and more you regenerate an area, more confidence grows in that area, and we are more likely to get all of our retail units filled up if we build more. No, I completely agree that there's only a few that are empty at the moment. It's not great. Actually, can I just update, and I didn't get this question, but I'm quite surprised. I would just like to announce that the Enterprise Centre is 100% occupied, and not by any council services at all, and FYC is 93% occupied as well. Not only that, but the Enterprise Centre are looking to expand as well. That was just a little aside. The Central Leisure Quarter, I can't tell you where that company is based, but I can tell you they're not struggling for funds. Councillor Galley, I will personally chase up the PSPO for parks, because yes, that's kind of slipped from my view. Yeah. Talbot Roads. Litter and street drinkers, yeah. Litter, was it windy? I'm not sure. I mean, sometimes, you know, it can happen. Yeah. Street drinkers, yes, as you're probably aware, there has been quite a intensive project to do with things like that, which has been fairly successful, but it's ongoing. It's not going to happen overnight, unfortunately. It's just something that we need to keep going and trying to sustain, which is obviously problematic when it comes to resources. Fines for litter, sorry, that's you as well, wasn't it? This can probably answer both yours and Councillor Williams' question about 3GS. There's an evaluation going underway at the moment to see how that pilot has gone, and obviously as soon as I have anything to share with you, I will do. And I was aware of the taxi driver attacks as well, speaking about it today, and whilst I can't give any details, there is going to be something happening fairly shortly about that. Councillor Williams, the Arts Hotel. Yeah, I did have an update on that hotel myself a couple of months back, because I, like you, was concerned that nothing seemed to be happening. If you don't mind, I might just forward that on to you so you have it as well, if that's okay. Councillor Mrs Callow, yes, cycling on pavements. Yeah, apart from litter, it's one of my biggest bugbears. Yeah, it's terrible. These people are supposed to be responsible adults. The children cycle better than them, frankly. And all I can say is I will speak to the police and to officers as well and put a renewed effort into trying to tackle this issue. I'm not quite sure what we can do about the shared space on the prom, because obviously that's what it's there for. But we will look at all areas in the town where cyclists are, if that's okay with members. Thank you very much, Mr Mayor.
Thank you very much, Councillor Campbell. Cabinet Secretary, Councillor Graham Kane.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Before I present the report, I'd just like to say a big thank you to Cross Party. Yesterday we stood united with the people down at the Central Mosque, and it was a very good attendance by both the Labour Party and the Conservative Party, and the message there from the multi-faith organisations was a very thankful and supportive message that they fed back to us, and they were quite impressed by the number of councillors that were standing together with the multi-faith, and it's fair to say that whatever faith or non-faith that people have, we live in one world. These people that are committing these horrendous evil attacks are out there to break our communities, and standing together and making sure that we're stronger together as a community, we will succeed every time that anybody tries to do destroy in our communities. We're building resilience here in Blackpool, and yesterday, thank you to everybody that went to the Central Mosque. I know it was short notice, but the other thing that was given to the faith, all the different faith leaders, was the messages of support from people that couldn't physically make it yesterday, but it was sending a message out, and hopefully we'll get that into the press later this week. We have had group photos there just to show and standing in solidarity, like we have done for everybody that's been affected when we've had our minute silence or 2 minute silences on the town hall steps and throughout the council buildings. And I hope that we don't have another one, but we do have to remain vigilant, and that's what I would say. But again, thank you for everyone that supported yesterday's event down at the Central Mosque. And with that, Mr Mayor, I'll present the report as it's written and hopefully be able to answer any questions that come up. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Page 21. Any questions? Page 22. So sorry. I'm sorry, Councillor Williams, didn't see you. I did.
Thank you, sir. A couple of questions. Just on statistics, really. The care home and care quality, where we are lying just 1 out of the top 20 range, Does the Cabinet member know who sits at the top? Who's number one in the country? It doesn't give the target or the chart here. I'm interested in that. And the Public Mental Health Action Plan at the bottom of the page, it states that our suicide rate is 17 per 100,000, which is high compared to national average. But when you also consider that Blackpool, unfortunately, is a suicide destination, as is the Cliffs of Dover, Beachy Head, etc. So I think when making these statistics up, we have to realise not every unfortunate suicide in this town is from a resident of the town. Quite a few come from outside. So that particular statistic is somewhat distorted because of that fact. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Wayne.
Councillor Mrs. Kellogg.
Councillor Mrs. Kellogg.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The North West Care Homes. I'm very pleased that Blackpool came out of this reasonably well. I am, but I'm absolutely horrified that the North West is the worst performing region in England when it comes to the proportion of satisfactory care homes. That is very, very worrying. And I know it's not our responsibility, but one day we'll all be, hopefully, old and maybe go in one of these homes, and I wouldn't like to think that I was going to be in one that was outside Blackpool. I wondered, Mr. Mayor, how often this was compiled. Is it annually or every 6 months or whatever? I notice here that this was relating to January this year, but certainly the fact that the North West has been held up as the worst is absolutely dreadful. And it is a great pity for other care homes in the North West that are perhaps up to a good standard, and they're going to all be tarred with the same brush. And people are going to say, oh dear, I don't want a relative of mine to go in a care home in the North West. And that is very worrying for the decent homes and the ones that do provide excellent care for elderly, vulnerable people. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Kellogg. Anyone else on page 22? Thank you very much indeed. It's Councillor Humphreys.
Can I just ask that the question about suicide that was just brought up, that it is possible that it could be sensitively handled and we could still actually get a breakdown, and you would be able to find out how many people actually come in from Blackpool and die, and therefore, you know, find out actually how much it is skewed, because I don't believe it's quite as skewed as we believe.
Thank you, Councillor Humphreys. Did I see another hand go up at the back? No? No? Anyone else on page 22? Thank you. Page 23. Thank you, Councillor Galley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just in the area of transforming services, of the 5 priorities, the one that stood out for me was effective transition. I can't sort of emphasise enough that how important that of all the priorities, that's probably one that we concentrate on, in terms of we now have an age of multi-academy trusts, free schools, state schools, and it's going to be very hard to keep on top of how do we make sure that the children in the town are getting in roughly the same sort of curriculum that links together in all of their schools, and at the same time a familiarity in terms of induction from one school to another that links from their primary education to their secondary education. And it's something I've noticed with the primary academy in Ankersome, being on the border, that there is a lot of emphasis from parents trying to get their children out of our area in terms of Blackpool and into wider schools. But at the same time, I'm also concerned that the reason they're doing that is because they don't feel there is this transition process in place in Blackpool, and I feel if it's happening in our school, it's probably happening across the town as well. So if the emphasis of all 5 could be put on transition, especially at a time when we have all these different types of schools, it'd be most welcome.
Councillor Galley, thank you. Anyone else on page 23? Thank you. Page 24. Page 25. And if there's anyone with questions on page 26, it's not much room for you. Yeah. I'll ask for general questions then, thank you. Thank you. Councillor Scott, I do apologise.
Sorry, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a question for Councillor Kane, of course. It's about something that isn't on report, if he doesn't mind. I would just ask for an update on the numbers of looked after children, if it's possible at this moment in time. That's all. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Mr. Scott. Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I can probably answer Councillor Scott's question there, because I'm absolutely astounded and quite shocked that one of the most important things that this council does is looked after children. We're all corporate parents, we're all responsible, we have a heartfelt duty to look after these children. And time again, Councillor Kane has stood before this council and promised he would do all he can to reduce these numbers. It was his job, he will do it. I know it's difficult, I'm not going to blame Councillor Kane for this, but the current number stands at 546 looked after children. The overall total, of course, is probably 4 times more than that, but in that criteria it's 546. We've got a new head of service who I believe has hit the ground running and doing great. But can I quote from something Councillor Kane said exactly 1 year ago, in fact a year ago tomorrow, in this council? A newly appointed an analyst to undertake a whole town review of rising demand to develop a better understanding of the issues which underline this. In addition, the Deputy Director People is leading an audit of children received into the looked after system and of those subject to child in need plans. This, in addition to other audits which have been carried out to consider the consistency of thresholds, additional social worker posts are currently being recruited too. The leadership team is also reviewing a number of services to support a more robust offer for those in need of early help. I could go on. It goes on for another couple of sentences. But quite clearly, we've not seen that report. I don't think anybody else has seen the report of this analyst. We are going in the wrong way. We're all saddened by it. It's something that we have to get to the root of. And despite Councillor Kane promising it was his job and he will get to the bottom of this, we're still going in the wrong way. Could we see a copy of that analyst's report? And from that statement you made in June 2016, all the other issues you were putting into plan there, could we see a breakdown of actually what that produced, what it told us, and what we're doing about it? Thank you, Mr. Mayor. One other question, I beg your pardon. I'm often asked by parents, and I'm sure we all are, about school holidays, how expensive it is to take your kids on away at school holidays. And quite a few of the schools, we have, this may have come up before, but I'm going to repeat it anyway. Parents have children in 1 or 2 different schools, and the holidays are not synchronised. Can we not get together with our heads of schools and the other parts of it? Sorry, somebody want to say?
Thank you. One speaker.
Can we not get together and get some sort of synchronisation going on holidays? Is that at all possible, or are there some blocks stopping us from doing that? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Forgive me, we had Councillor Mrs. Callow next. Forgive me. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. On the previous portfolio, we had a couple of speakers referring to the health service. And I know it's boring, but I'm going to say once again about my fabulous doctor's surgery. And the fact, ladies and gentlemen, they have got vacancies. They have got vacancies for national health patients. But don't all rush there, will you? Because otherwise the service may deteriorate. But I went to see my GP. I went to see him. I had an appointment at 8:20 because he starts at 8 o'clock in the morning. My surgery is open from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. and it's also open on a Saturday morning. And I went to see him and he said, right, well, we'll x-ray your foot. So I said, that's fine. He gave me a letter to take along to the walk-in centre. And I got the first appointment there. I just walked in. They started work at 9 o'clock, I had my x-ray, and by 9:15 I was back in my car and going home. You couldn't get service like that if you paid for it. Somebody said to me, oh, well, it's because you're a counsellor, when I was telling them the story. I said, not at all. Not at all. It could have been anybody. And Mr. Mayor, I know that there are some counsellors here that go to the same surgery. So it's not all bad with the NHS. I keep saying this. My surgery is wonderful, with wonderful nurses, doctors, receptionists, and I couldn't have a better service if I paid for it. And I have got to defend them because I don't want people criticising them. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor excuse me. Excuse me. Thank you. Jealousy from the husband's no good. Thank you, Councillor Blackburn.
Nearly forgot what I was going to say there. Councillor Mrs. Callow, just as it is known, we attend a very exclusive medical practice. Now, I'm glad she didn't name it because I wouldn't want everybody signing up to it. But I indicated, Councillor Williams pointed out school holidays. And it does make you think, doesn't it, that, Mr. Mayor, that if only all of the schools in Blackpool were in some way affiliated to each other, were in some way accountable to the local authority, and you know, maybe we could have something called a director of education, and they could organise all of the schools. They could have a school holiday pattern. They could have common admission criteria. They could make sure there was the same funding for every pupil. They could make sure that free school meals were distributed in a fair way. If only a situation like that existed, that would be marvellous. But for some reason it doesn't. And for the life of me, I can't remember who it was that changed that system. I'm sure Councillor Kane will remind us.
Thank you all. Thank you, Councillor Blackburn. Any more questions? And Councillor Kane to respond.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In respect to the Councillor Williams, you asked who's number one. I don't know, but I will find out, and we'll get you the list of the top 20. No. Well, you've asked me a question, I'm giving you the answer. I don't often have to write to people, so I'm usually quite au fait at answering things. But I will get that. The suicide rate, are you saying about us, we're a suicide destination? That's, whilst it's perceived that we are a suicide destination, we're not exclusive on that. You did mention other towns. It is I think it was Councillor, which one was Councillor Humphreys, you mentioned about suicide. Could we have a breakdown of where they are? We can certainly report that back because we work with the coroner, and as you know, that if there is a suicide here in town, our coroner service have to pick that up. So we will be able to furnish the data. So I'll speak to the coroner and see what information he can provide to us for future reports. Regarding the care homes, Mrs. Callow, I'm pleased to say that most of our care homes here in Blackpool are rated good or outstanding. It is a concern that the rest of them in the area, the region, bring us down. That's something that, you know, it does reflect that, and as that there refers to in the report, it's a CQC audited report, but Councillor Cross will furnish you with any information specifically that you need, because it does fall directly under Councillor Cross's remit. So she'll furnish you anything there and a report on our local situation. Councillor Galley, you mentioned about the transforming services bit and the effective transition from schools. We do have a school-led improvement board, and hopefully they'll work together, because we do know that a lot of the results that we are seeing in primary are really good, but the secondary schools results are quite poor. So that's a school-led, so they're leading that themselves. So we sit on there, Councillor Benson sits on that on behalf of myself. So again, that's will be raised and can be raised, because I think it's something that all those points are valid, and we've got to do everything that we can possibly do to improve the prospects for all our children in the town. We come on there about the looked after children. Councillor Williams, I've just got to correct you. The figure at 546 is incorrect. It's now 550. 550 is the actual number of this. This week's number was 550. That was a reduction from last week from 557. So there are people coming out of the system there. What we are doing with the new Director of Children's Services, who you're right, she's here tonight. Diane she did hit the ground running. She's got a lot of work there. She's meeting the staff personally. She's already met 450 members of staff since she's been here. Lots of ideas there. We've got, I know you referred to what I said 12 months ago, but this time we've got, we just updated the leader last week with a proposal of an investor save. So we're going to invest some money so we can actually work on those numbers and get them reduced. And we believe that we could make a drastic improvement there, but a lot of the work has to go into the preparation of the cases before we can go back to the courts to get them out of that number. So we are working on the numbers, and I've been assured that those will come down, but it won't be immediately. And I've said it before, if a child needs to be in care, that's the right place for them. We will not leave any child in this town in a vulnerable situation, and we will look after each and every child that we've got. And again, last night, thanks to cross-party at the corporate parent panel, we had a debate with some of the young people there, and let me tell you, and your colleagues will tell you the same, Andrew, you've been there. They tell us what it's like. They tell us exactly. They hold us to account. And Diane was with us last night, and they are quite challenging. They're quite robust in what they put to us and say, would you treat yours? So we are working with the system is stacked against us, but like I say, I'm convinced that the way that things have been done in the past could have been a lot better. But I'm convinced now that as we're moving forward with what I've seen and the draft report that was done within the first 4 weeks, there's certainly light at the end of the tunnel. And I think that could be backed up with what we've briefed you with, Simon. So a lot of work going on there. You mentioned about the analysts and the report. Well, that was led by the former Deputy Director. But we'll chase that up because I haven't seen it, to be honest, and it was a case that there was a lot of things that were said, and I don't want to be here just by an individual. There were a lot of things that were said and promised to me, and at some point I have to take their word, you know, but I do challenge, but now I tell you now, we've certainly, and some people will say, oh, you say this every time you get a new director. We have not got anybody that's going to make a difference like we have now. We've got a real good director who knows what she's doing. She's going to be working closer with us. Yeah, no, she's going to do it, and we've got to do. Hang on, I'm losing my thread here. You mentioned the school holidays, and I think it frustrates all people, and why they can't get their heads together. And I'm not going to go down with the whole argument of they're all academised, but all our secondary schools are academised, and it's like different businesses. You think sometimes they're not even on the same hymn sheet. It's totally irrational, and we've got people. I know people that have got children in 3 different schools and they're on 3 different holidays. Even half term spreads over, it's not half term anymore, it spreads over 4, 5, 6 weeks. It is something that they need to get their heads together, and hopefully we can steer them, but we can't tell them what to do because they're academies. And And that picks up Councillor Blackburn's point, you know, if only we could have that responsibility back, but we can't. We're not there. We might change it one day. Ending on a positive. Mrs Carroll, the health service, I've got to say, yes, we've got the best health service in the country. You, I and the leader have got the best GP service and best GP surgery in the country, but we're not going to reveal where that is because we want to get in when we want to get in. So I've got to say, and I do echo that our health service gets slated, but believe me, they do a tremendous job, and I'm really, really pleased and proud of what they do and what they've done, not just here in Blackpool, but what the emergency service have done over the last few weeks has absolutely been tremendous. They've ran into dangers, as we all know, and I think that each and every one of them really does need a round of applause if we're in that position, because I think they do an absolutely fantastic job. That's all our emergency services. I saw it the other week. We had our own fire down on Lytham Road, and that there was, you know, fire engines were there from almost throughout the northwest. There were 13 fire attenders in that fire. Again, when they go in and they run into danger, and I'll tell you what, Mr Mayor, I would take my hat off to anyone who's working in those services, because they do this town and the country proud, and it's something that we should respect. And I've got total admiration for all those people that do put themselves in danger to keep us protected. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Kane. Thank you. Report of the Independent Remuneration Panel. Councillor Blackburn.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Delighted to present the report of the Independent Remuneration Panel. Thank you. That's never going to get boring, is it? The Audit Committee wishes to have an independent member on the Audit Committee, which is both good housekeeping and general good governance, to get an external point of view. The Independent Remuneration Panel have recommended that that person be paid the grand sum of £700 per year. I believe that that will assist in the recruitment process, as our sort of small payments to non-executive directors and other independent people has done over the past few years. So I'm delighted to propose that, Mr Mayor.
Thank you very much, Councillor Blackburn. Councillor Galley to second.
Brilliant. Thank you, Mr Mayor. Yeah, it gives me great pleasure to second it. Just to echo the words of the leader, the journey that we're undertaking on the Audit Committee with the work of Councillor Arms and the audit members is that we want it to become ultimately one of the best audit committees in the country, in terms of what it does for Blackpool, in terms of what it does for Blackpool Council, in terms of working to the CIFRA guidelines of delivering assurance on our processes, and most of all value for money. With what few pennies we do have, we spend them to the best pound and penny that we can, and we'll damn well make sure that that £700 is more than delivered on by the work of the independent member. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you very much, Councillor Galley. Any other councillors to speak? Councillor Blackburn, right to reply? No response, no one to reply to, I'm afraid. So, whether we will take a vote on the motion. All in favour? I think that's unanimous. Thank you. That, I believe, concludes the business of the meeting. May I thank you all for attending and for being so charming in all your speeches.
Please be upstanding.